All right. Welcome everybody to our webinar on government contracting for the small business. My name is Nathan Owens. I work at UCSD Extension, where I have been the organizer for this series over the past couple of years. And I want to provide you with today's quick agenda. We have a lot to cover today, so I'm going to be very brief, and then I'll turn things over to our speaker, Andrew Hayes. So again, this session is being recorded. We want to make it available on the UCSD Extension's YouTube channel later for you to refer back to if you need to, or for others to be able to take advantage of the knowledge that Andrew's going to share today. So Andrew, let me briefly introduce him as our speaker, and then he can also add more detail once he takes over here. He's the CEO of MRP Training Solutions. He's a Navy veteran, and he has been involved in government contracting, specifically defense contracting, for 30+ years, and he has been CEO of MRP Training Solutions for at least the past 5 years. So he has a wealth of knowledge, some practical hands-on, probably hard lessons learned that he's willing to share with you today. And he's got a lot of information to cover. So should we not run into or come up on that 12 o'clock time limit, we want to make sure you do have an opportunity to ask questions. So we'll try to make time for that. You can submit them via chat. Andrew is also able to hang out a little bit longer if need be, and he will also provide his contact information at the end. So you can always email him later if you have particular questions, because government contracting is a complicated business to get into. So with that, I will turn things over to you, Andrew. And oh, sorry, real quick. Almost forgot. Give you a quick overview of Extension. So we are the public outreach, the community engagement, continuing and professional education arm of UC San Diego, essentially a university within a university. We have a huge number of courses and enrollments, which you can see on those numbers there. For this series, I have a couple of partners that I've worked with over the past couple of years. These are 2 co-working spaces located in downtown San Diego. Downtown Works and Cross Campus. Looking forward to eventually doing the in-person sessions again when we are all able to do so. For feature topics in this series, they're coming up next month. We have 2 here around customer retention strategies, and another one about the importance of accounting. Particularly as we might be dealing with the tough economic climate, we want to make sure we have people who can share some strategies about how to navigate that. So those might be worth tuning in for. We've also just started a leadership and management essentials series. So right now we have sessions scheduled every other week into June, and we'll probably continue on. So the next one coming up on that is on June 3rd, and I'll put links in the chat for these if you want to check them out. If you want to stay abreast of what's going on in the Small Business Management series, here's the link for that. And I will, again, put it in chat here in a minute. And you can always refer to this webpage to find out what sessions are coming up and to register for them. These are all free for anyone to sign up for. Lastly, I try to source these topics from the community to try and make sure that these are relevant and valuable for you, the small business owner or employee. So please, if you have ideas, feel free to shoot me an email with those. And with over 1,000 subject matter experts and instructors at Extension, there's a pretty good chance I can put together something for you. So now I will turn it over to Andrew and let you take things from here. Yep.
Okay. So thank you very much for that introduction, Nathan. I appreciate it. Sorry for the little bit of hassle getting the monitors set up right here. If you notice on the first slide, I've edited the title a little bit. We're calling it Defense Contracting for Small Business, as opposed to just government contracting for small business. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, as Nathan said, I've been in the defense contracting business for a number of years. It's really been the 5 years or so as a CEO where I've learned the most that's applicable to what we're going to be discussing today. But I've been in the industry for a long time, so it's what I know the most about. But the other reason for doing that is if you can be compliant with Department of Defense regulations, you're probably going to be compliant with just about any other federal agency or department's regulations as well. There are going to be some processes and challenges that you have that are unique within defense contracting as opposed to other sectors that you might be doing some business in. The objective today is really for entrepreneurs, people who are just getting started, owners, directors who are thinking about going into government contracting or looking at it as an option or maybe a new market for their products. And some people may have a lot of experience in this already. I go to a lot of seminars. I go to a lot of presentations. I did an 8-hour version where I was a student a few weeks ago, basically covering the same type of information. They just went into a little more detail. So I still learn a lot when I go to these types of events. So if you do have experience, hopefully you'll still take something away from this, but it's really more focused on people who are just looking into this, getting started, trying to figure out if it's a market or a customer that you're interested in going after. So we're going to, the agenda is posted here, but we're going to spend about the first half of this presentation talking about government contracting in general, just some of the processes, different types of contracts, things that you need to consider when you're looking at doing the government work as a line for your company. But then we're also going to spend about half the time, maybe a little bit more, in these challenge areas that I've identified. Every business has to deal with these things. Everybody's got to get organized. Everybody has to have their processes and things in place. Everybody has to focus on sales and marketing and branding, creating new business, accounting, security. Everybody has to deal with these things. But once you start doing business with the United States government, the level of effort that you're going to have in all of those areas and some others just goes up exponentially. So we're going to be spending the time talking about these challenge areas besides the technology of using Zoom, right? We're going to be talking about these other challenge areas that you have. But I hope that one of the big takeaways that you have from this is I'm going to leave you with a lot of resources at the end. And then, like Nathan said, if you have any questions, please, send them in to him through chat. If we don't get to them today, I'm going to give you my contact information at the end. Feel free to email me, contact me with any questions that you have. I won't always know the answer, but I probably know someone or some organization that will know the answer. And so we'll point that out to you as well. So the first question you have to ask is, why would you want to do business with the United States government? And it reminds me of a story that I heard years ago about a very successful bank robber who eventually was convicted, but he probably got away with way more than he ever was convicted of. And he was being interviewed by an FBI profiler and said, when was asked, why do you rob banks? And he said, well, that's where they keep the money, right? It was a very pragmatic answer. It wasn't some deep philosophical reason of, banks ruined my family or they took our land. No, that's where the money is. And it's kind of the same with government contracting. The United States government spends an awful lot of money every year on the purchase of goods and services. The slide that you see up there now, over on the right, I've got the pie chart with the 2018 numbers. 2019, I've seen them, I just haven't verified them. I heard it's around 560 billion. And what's a few billion of my friends there, right? It's a big number. That is an awful lot of money spent on goods, services, research and development. And if you look at that pie chart, about 2/3 of it is spent within the Department of Defense. So you've got a potential customer who has an awful lot of money to spend and actually spends that money. If you look at that note that's in that there on the DoD side, it says government-wide, the goal is to award a minimum of 25% to small businesses. So now not only do you have a customer who has a lot of money to spend, they are committed. They in some cases by law, they're committed to spending a certain amount of that on small businesses. So that's a pretty good thing as well. And then you have to ask, well, what do they buy? When we think of the Department of Defense, we think about things like ships and airplanes and missiles and satellites and things like that. And it's true that they contract out for those things, but it's more than that. And even if you look at one of those things, like a ship, for example, it's everything, you know, a company like Huntington Ingalls or General Dynamics will get a contract for that, but there will be hundreds of subcontractors that are providing different materials and services, everything from nuts, bolts, screws, pipes, pumps, engineering equipment to office supplies, bedding materials, cooking materials, everything that needs to go onto that ship to make it habitable and useful, right? So they buy everything. And it's not just those things that are related to the warfare side of it, but it's real estate. They have to have offices to work out of. They have to have office furniture. They have to have, you know, office supplies and all of those things that go into making a company or an operation function. And so they buy just about any good or service. I talked about some of the goods, but on the services side, we're a training company. That's what we do. But they buy accounting services. They buy IT services, cybersecurity, marketing, program management. There's just, it's almost unlimited as to what the United States government buys at any time, right? And across the government, not just the Department of Defense. On this slide, I left my a little bit of the background, but the reason that I left this here is the 20 years of active duty service that I had. Yeah, it introduced me to some vocabulary, it introduced me to some organizations, but it really hasn't prepared me for what I needed to do in running this company. I worked for this company for about 13, 14 years before I bought the company. And even while I was working for the company, I wasn't running the company, right? It's really been this 5 years that I've had as a CEO where I've learned the most. And I'll tell you, my learning curve is almost vertical. I learn something new every day. I'm challenged by something every day, and there's no way that you can know it all. But if you like learning, if you like being forced into doing some new things or things outside of your comfort zone, and you're not afraid to get in there and just do it, this is one of those areas where you're going to be learning a lot, and it's just it just continues, right? It just never ends. The degree that I have, or degrees that I have play a role in it, but it's really the getting in there and doing it. And if you have the courage, if you have the product, if you have those things that you need to get started, it's going to a little presentation like this, and then all the other things that I'm going to introduce you to that can help you be successful. Because my experience has been on the government side, big companies that we work with, everybody wants to help you. Everybody wants to see you succeed. And I haven't seen that in other aspects of business that I've been in before. So the United States government is a pretty good potential customer for you. And Nathan and I were talking before we went live that it also provides a little bit of recession proof for your business, disaster proof like COVID, things like this. Yeah, we've been affected, but not to the same level that a lot of other businesses and a lot of other industries have been. So lots of good reasons to consider doing business with the United States government. And like any new undertaking, and I'm not going to turn this into, business planning 101 type thing, but it's one of the things that you would need to do early on is do that analysis to see if this is something you really want to go after. You got to look at those internal factors. What are your strengths? What can you bring to the government directly or to another company that you would want to team with that you could leverage off your strengths and leverage off their strengths to go after a potential opportunity? And when you have weaknesses, you've got to figure out, well, okay, I can identify this as a weakness. I don't have a, for example, I don't have any government experience. Well, you could shore that up by teaming with companies that do have that experience that you don't have, or hiring, individuals that have that experience, or bringing on consultants that have that. So, but you have to go through that methodical process of doing this analysis. When I saw this in schools that I was in the past, and pretty much every business seminar, I always thought of it as more of an academic exercise, but it's not. When you start talking to investors and directors, professionals, they want to make sure that you've done this. So I highly recommend that you go through this process to figure out if government contracting is the right direction for your company. You may see that it's not. I've talked to people who tried to get into it, had some success, but then just found the burdens sometimes to be a little too great, and focused primarily on non-government work. But so you do have to go through that process, though, to make sure that you are moving in the right direction, and that you invest your time, effort, resources, whatever they are, to set you up for success on this. One of the things that I like about government contracting, especially at the federal level, and that's where most of my discussion will be today, is the process that they use to buy goods, services, R&D is well-defined, it's published, it's transparent. If I want to know what the government is paying for something right now because I want to bid on that contract in the future, that information is out there. It's not hidden. I have to dig for it a little bit. I have to work for it, but the information is out there. So it's a really well-defined process. If you came to me today and said, hey, Andrew, I want you to go sell your services to Microsoft or FedEx or Facebook or any other, organization, I couldn't tell you how to do that. I don't know how they buy their office supplies. I don't know how they contract out for training services. It's not published anywhere. It's their proprietary company information. But when it comes to the United States government, it's controlled by law, policy, and regulations. So that is one thing that I really like about it. And as you're starting a new business or looking to get into this as a new market for your business, it's easy to find the information that you need that will give you that roadmap for what you need to do to be successful. The procurement process at the federal level is broken up into these three big areas. There's pre-award, the actual awarding of the contract itself, and then the post-award, which is really the performance and wrapping up the contract. So on the pre-award side, this is your opportunity to get to know customers, who the buyers are, who's actually using these goods or services that you're looking to sell. And there are lots of tools, and we're going to talk about some of those tools in the challenge area that's coming up in a bit on business development. We're going to talk about some of those tools, but there are tools out there that will help you identify things that are coming out a year from now, 2 years from now, and you can start doing the work that you need to build those relationships to possibly capture some of that business. A couple of things that the government provides for you to get your name in front of these buyers. They will send out these solicitations as either sources sought, market surveys. Sometimes it'll go out as a request for information. You can find this information online. And again, I'm going to show you some of the tools for this in a minute. But they're basically saying we have a problem and we're looking for industry to provide that solution or to provide a solution for that problem. And they're going to tell you exactly what they want from you in responding. They may just ask for a capability statement. They may ask for your catalog, but more than likely they're going to ask for you, especially in the services side, they're going to ask you to come back with a written proposal as to what your approach to this would be. And they're going to limit you on the number of pages and things that they don't want you to send in a 50-page document most of the time. It's going to be a couple of pages and how you would approach this problem, how you think it should be structured, that you understand what the problem is and you understand how your solution will solve that. And so it's a good opportunity for you to get the name of your company, your brand in front of the buyers. And one of the things that I like about it is also gives you some the ability to help shape the statement of work. Because if you tell them that you believe a woman-owned small business can do this, then they may decide to put that out as a woman-owned small business set aside. Or they may say, this person really understands the problem, or this company understands the problem. They're a woman-owned small business. We need to get more of those for our quotas for the year to get closer to that 25% goal. And they may sole source it to you. They may not even put it out for competition. So this is a good opportunity for you to get in front of the customers. There's other opportunities where it's more in person. The last one that I did was actual virtual now, but they're usually in person. It's an industry day where normally these are on very large contracts, but the customer, the buyer, and those are two separate entities in most cases. They come together, industry's there, the incumbent contractor's there, and they talk about the next version of the contract that's coming out, what they're looking for, what kind of services they're going to be wanting, what kind of labor they're going to need on it. And this is an opportunity for you to meet the other companies that are interested in this work. So if you're just starting out and there's an opportunity, well, now you have a place where you know the companies represented there have an interest in it. So it's a good way for you to meet them. So the next thing that happens, though, after the government does this, they'll release a solicitation, and then you submit a response, and your response becomes your offer. They've told you the problem. Now you're giving them your solution, and here's how much we're going to do it for. You do provide your pricing in that. The government's going to review them. Once they make a decision, they're going to award the contract. There'll usually be a kickoff meeting, a little bit of transitional time, and then it comes time for performance. And that's delivering whatever goods and services you're supposed to deliver. There will be reports that have to be submitted. There's invoicing procedures that have to be followed. And there's a precise way of closing out the contracts when you're done. But again, I just want to go back to, this is the process, but it's very well defined. And if you're just going to think about it in these three areas, it's pretty easy to manage it then, right? Go, okay, let me focus on the business I want to get. And then once I get that business, how am I going to deliver and make sure that I meet the government's expectations? One question that I do get sometimes on this is, what is the timeline on that? And a good answer when it comes to the federal government is it depends, right? I have seen from the time a sources salt goes out to a contract being awarded being close to 2 years. I've also seen it where it's I've also seen it where contracts will be awarded within a few weeks. I've seen it go from and here's a worst case example. A contract was awarded to us on a Thursday with performance starting on the following Monday, right? So you don't have a lot of time to get people in place and get all the administrative things that you have to do. And typically the contracts in the services sector that we work in, they're really awarded for a 5-year time. There are some exceptions there, and it's usually done as a base year plus 4 option years. So you've got some time to, continue building those relationships, but the process is well defined. It's just not always consistent as to the timeline there. So one of the other things that I wanted to address here is on the contract opportunities themselves, especially with small business. Some are going to be set aside just for small business. They will sometimes be competitive, where only certain types of small businesses can compete for that work, or they will be sole sourced. And my company has been the recipient or have been awarded contracts under both approaches. We have 2 contracts that we're in the process of getting right now that we believe will be sole source to us. We will be the only company. It will not be competed. The government has decided that we can do this work. We can do it at a rate that's going to be acceptable to them. And then we've also won on contracts where it was set aside for small business. We put in our proposal, some other companies put in ours, and it was awarded to us. There can also be contract opportunities that are set aside based more on your socioeconomic status. We are a service disabled veteran-owned small business. I haven't won a contract based on that, but I have been included on teams because of that. Same for women-owned small business. And both of these right now are self-certifications. There are some that you can do at the state level that are a little more formal process. 8A and HubZone are both SBA or Small Business Administration programs that there is guaranteed work out there for 8As and HubZones. If you can get those designations, then there might be some work that you get that they're just going to award it to you, because when I said it was 25% goal across the board, within these different categories, there's higher numbers. I think for service disabled veteran, the goal is like 3%. Whereas for 8A business, it might be 10% or something. I don't know what the actual number is, but it's higher than 3%. So you can start looking into these different designations that are out there and see that they might be a good fit for your business. And then at last, there's joint ventures. You can get in with other small businesses. You can develop these mentor protege programs. The 8A is kind of a mentor protege program as well, or it has that built into it. So that may be something you look at as well. So there's opportunities out there for small business. And then real quick, there are 3 general types of contracts that you can get: fixed price, cost reimbursement, and time and material. Time and material, labor hours, is very similar to cost. The big difference on cost is to do a cost-based contract, you have to have an approved accounting system. But the big difference between fixed price and something that's related to cost is who's taking the risk. On a fixed price contract, the contractor is who's taking the risk. The government told you what they needed. You go in, you do your research, you do your analysis, and you say, my company can deliver this service for this amount of money. And the government holds you to that in a contract. If your costs go up, then you make less money or nothing. If your costs go down, if you become more efficient, then you can potentially make more money. Your margins can increase a little bit. But the risk is on you as the contractor there. As a cost reimbursement, the risk is really on the government, because as your cost of materials and labor go up within certain parameters, you can offset that. The government doesn't want you to lose money because of this. And so it depends. I prefer fixed price for the type of work we do. It's easy to predict. It's easy for us to account for those things. Cost takes a little bit more work. But like I said, for the nature of the work that we provide, it's easy to calculate those things and accept that risk. If you ask me to bid on a contract to deliver aviation fuel to Marine Corps Air Station Miramar, I'm definitely going to do that on a cost. I'm not going to do that on a fixed price unless I suddenly came into a big surplus of aviation fuel, because I know that the price fluctuates too much. I know that then that's for the fuel that's being delivered. I also know it fluctuates for my vehicles that are delivering it, right? So you got to look at those, and just because a contract comes out, you got to think about what's going to be in your company's best interest for competing on that with an acceptable level of risk, something that you can manage. So let's get into those challenge areas that I wanted to mention. Every business has administrative issues to deal with. When it comes to doing government contracting, defense contracting, it's just that level of effort goes up a little bit. Everybody's got to form their company. Everybody needs to, be incorporated or LLC or whatever your entity is. Everybody has to get a taxpayer or employer identification number. You may or may not be familiar with DUNS. It's a Dun and Bradstreet numbering system. It's used a lot for company credit reports and things like that. Everybody has to have some of those things, right? Most of those things. But once you start doing defense contracting, you have to have those plus a few other things that you may not be familiar with. But for you to even call yourself a government contractor, before you can do any business with the government, you have to be enrolled in the System for Award Management. It's SAM, is what people refer to it as. I've given you the link there. You'd have to go in initially, get your account, get approved for an account, and then you go in and build your company's profile. And I've given you that list of things that you need to get started. Your articles of incorporation, corporate resolutions, some things like that. Your DUNS number. I heard that requirement is going away, but I haven't seen that yet. Another thing that you're going to have to do is determine what industry you're in. And that's done through something called a NAICS code or NAICS code, NAICS. It's the North American Industry Classification System. If you're already a corporate entity, it's on your corporate tax return. Your accountant may have chosen it for you, or whoever did your taxes. You may not have been aware of it, but it's on your tax return of what your NAICS code is. It's classifying what industry you're in. So you have to go through and you select what your industry is going to be. Some of them, the codes are very specific and some are very general. If you look at the three that I have listed there, the bottom two, 611710 and 541330, those are two that my company has. We have probably 10 or 12 identified on SAM. And they're pretty general. Engineering services, well, what kind is that? Civil engineering or electrical engineering? Well, it's pretty general terminology. And then educational support. Well, what does that really mean, right? Is it developing curriculum or administering a facility? It's very general. Whereas the first one that's listed there just randomly jumped out at me. There is one for something as specific as beach chair rentals, not beach chair sales or repair. It's very specific code. So you may want to go through and pick out a couple that are fairly general, and you may want to get a couple that are very specific. We have these, but we also have one just called computer training. We do a lot of technology type training. So you want to go through that guide and look at it. I've given you the link for the book that you can kind of go through and pick and choose a few that you want to have. And the way these come into play is when the government issues a solicitation, it will have a NAICS code assigned to that solicitation. So if you see something where the work interests you, you need to make sure that you have that NAICS code in your SAM profile. And all you have to do is log back in and add it. You don't have to prove that you can do it, right? You prove it through the performance, but you have to say that you have it. The other way that it comes into play on a very practical note is the Small Business Administration has set size standards for you to be, quote unquote, a small business. It's tied to your NAICS code. Some are based on revenue and some are based on personnel. The two that we have that are listed here are both based on revenue. 611710, the revenue I believe right now is an annual average of no more than $11 million for basically a 3-year sliding average. If you're under that, you can compete as a small business. If you're at 12 million, you're not going to be able to compete. Engineering services, the one below it, the 541330, the small business threshold for that one is something like 36 million. It's a big difference. So you could be on one contract where you're classified as a small business, but on another contract doing, say, something in educational support, that you're not a small business. And you could lose work because of that sometimes. If you get a contract that takes you over that threshold, and I mean, I've never heard of them taken away from someone mid-project, but at the end of that contract, they're probably going to say, you no longer qualify as a small business. So, if this is a small business set aside, even if you've been very successful doing it, you're no longer eligible for it. And you also have to pick your product and service codes. And you're going to see on a slide here in a minute where those come up again. And there's lots of other stuff. Now, until you get in and start going through it, you're going to see there's a lot of questions, a lot of certifications and representations that you have to make. But once you go through it, it's really just annually checking it or periodically going in and updating something. But the first thing that you get from that is something called a cage code. And it's a, I think, 5-digit number that now identifies you as a government contractor, and that will follow you for the rest of your company. Now, one of the entities that I'm going to talk about in a little bit for help, they can help you going in. They have seminars on setting up SAM. So if you have these resources in your area, it might be something you want to look at doing, or you just get in there and figure it out. Everybody's got laws and regulations they have to worry about, everything from OSHA, labor, benefits, 401k. There's all these different laws that we all have to deal with, depending on your industry, whether it's aviation or cosmetology or whatever. Everybody has local, state, federal laws, rules, and regulations they have to follow. But when you get over into government contracting, there's more, right? You still have to do those, but there's the federal acquisitions regulations, the FAR, it covers all government. The defense federal acquisitions regulations supplement, or DFARS is the way you're going to hear that one. That's covering defense contracts, and there will be a mix of both provisions for both of those laws in every contract you ever do with the Department of Defense. And then there's others. The international trafficking in arms regulation is one that if you're dealing with military technology, hardware, procedures, then you also have to be compliant with this law. But with all of these, and like I said, I want to reiterate this, that there are so many entities out there that can help you with these things. Our company actually won a grant a couple of years ago to help us build out our ITAR compliance program. It's something that we have to register for every year, even though we don't really do any international business. I call it a $2,250 annual tax that we have to pay to be registered in the system, but at least we're in there. If we develop some international business, then we can, our compliance program is in place. One of the other areas where you have a challenge is in business development, right? So for someone just getting started, this is where you're going to be thinking initially, wait a second, how do I go out and capture new business? Where do I get this information from? Well, like I said, when it comes to dealing with the federal government, the information is out there. It's available. It's not hidden. There's not these, there may be, I haven't experienced anything personally, and there's not like secret backdoor deals and things. This is public information, and you find that the contracting officers, the customers, are very transparent. They don't even want the perception of something. A lot of times they won't even talk to you until a proposal comes out, until a solicitation comes out, because they just want to avoid any, just a perception of any kind of impropriety. So there are tools in place for you to go out there and find opportunities that are available right now, or they're down the road. And I'll go through a couple. I've got a couple of screenshots, so I'll be going back and forth here a little bit. But one, it used to be known as Fed BizOps or FBO. It's now moving over to that SAM website, but right now the URL is beta.sam. And you go in there, and every opportunity that the federal government is putting out, anything they're looking for, is on that website. And here's a screenshot that I did a few months back. You go into the beta.sam.gov. Up at the top left, the screen capture there, I circled contract opportunities. And then I went in and did a search. That's the screenshot that you're seeing right below that. And the list, it went down. There were probably 20 or 30 items on there. And you kind of scroll through it and see if there's anything that you're interested in. And then over on the right-hand side, I've given you a screenshot of some of the information that comes back on the main page there. And on this one, you look at the top, the contract opportunity type is a sources sought. Okay, here's an opportunity for me to get my company's information in front of a customer. I can also look down in that middle section for the classification. It's an 8A business or 8A company. That product service code that you had to input into SAM, there it is. It's telling you a U099 education training. And there's the NICS code that they're going to associate with it, 611699, all other miscellaneous schools and instruction. It tells you where it's going to be. So again, now you've got that information down in the bottom, hidden in the text there. It tells you a little bit about what this is looking for, but it tells you there's a draft performance work statement. That's what you're going to respond to. They're going to give you instructions of how to respond. You're going to look in that PWS and say, okay, I think this is something we can do. I think I understand their problem. And this is your opportunity to get your name in front of the customer. So all federal contracts, every department, not just Department of Defense, they're going to be on this website. As you move down this list on the queuing, there's customer sites, and NavWar, for example, is one of the customers that we work with. It used to be called SpayWar here in San Diego. This is a screenshot from their portal. And again, you can look at things that they have coming up, things coming down the road, and you can look in and see, is it something that you're interested in? It even breaks it out by small business type that you can look at.
Andrew, we got just a little bit over 15 minutes left. So.
Right. There's also some third-party software tools, GovWin, Capture to Proposal. They're all very good. What they do is go out and basically crawl every database, and you can tailor it to provide you with information. I've looked at both of these. I haven't pulled the trigger on either one. I'm still using the free service there from something called the PTAC. And here's what I received yesterday as part of my search. They send me an email. There's 22 new articles that meet my search criteria. And over on the right was just an example of some of those things that they had provided. Then there's networking opportunities that you can get to, trade groups, industry events, training. Fortunately, for those of you that are here in San Diego, there are a lot of opportunities in this area. But you go to these events, number one, for training, exposure, but it's also to help identify companies or individuals that you would like to team with in the future. And then there's also a side to managing the proposals, writing those technical responses, writing those pricing responses. The third area that we have some challenges in are just in the performance themselves. And it's going to vary depending on whether or not you're the contractor or the subcontractor. I've listed those representations and certifications. You're going to make a lot of these in SAM when you go through and do your profile. But on just about every contract that you ever compete on, you'll also have to do them for that particular contract. And this is just a sample of some that I just had to do within the last couple of weeks. But you certify your business side. You certify that you understand there are security issues with safeguarding defense information. You have to look at what your personnel requirements are going to be and what you're hiring and if they need clearances and all those kind of things. And then the invoicing side of it, it's all done online now when you're the direct to the government. And so it's a good process. It works. And it actually, and I'm speeding up a little bit here because of the interest of time, but the government is my fastest paying customer. Right now, I manage 4 contracts, 1 direct to the government, 3 where we're a subcontractor. The big companies that we have teamed with typically pay in about 45 to 50 days. The United States government always pays under 30. Typically, it's closer to 20 days. And the one time that they went over 30, they automatically paid interest for the 2 or 3 days that they were late. So that's a pretty good thing, right? And so from a cash flow management standpoint, it's good to know that that's there. But anyway, everybody has to deal with performance and going out and doing or delivering whatever it is that you're doing. The other area, finance and accounting. Everybody's got to pay their bills. Everybody's got to track their revenue and expenses. But when you start doing defense contracting, I actually give you the provision in the law that defines what your accounting system has to do. And if you go through the process of getting an audit, these are the things that you're going to look at. So are you able to track both your direct cost and indirect cost? How do you track your billing, labor, all of these things? Compliance. There's going to be accounting compliance things that you have to deal with pre-award, on your pricing proposals, annually in this thing called an incurred cost proposal. Every year, due by June 30th, you have to submit to the government what all your costs were for the previous year, and it calculates an overhead rate for you that you can use to build up your pricing on contracts. So it's very complicated, especially if you're not an accountant, right? I've got over on the left there that most entrepreneurs are familiar with bail, right? You got to have your banker, your accountants, your insurance, and your lawyers. I've got from my experience here, right now, we have 2 different banks that we do business with. COVID has shown us that we need both a large bank and a community bank. We have 3 different accounting firms that we work with, 1 for compliance, 1 on taxation, and 1's more CFO type duties. Tons of insurance requirements above and beyond what you would normally have. And we have currently 2 law firms that we work with for different purposes, and probably adding a third one more on the taxes side. But you can gradually build this out. This has grown over 20 years of this company being in operations. And the last area that we want to talk about was security. When you start dealing with the Department of Defense or most of the government, there are going to be security requirements for personnel, for physical access, your IT systems. And when I first bought this company, the owner of the company said, you can mess up a lot of things, but security ain't one of them, right? You've got to get this one right all the time. So the NISPOM, and I've got the screenshot of the book over here on the left side. If you Google it, you can find it. The National Industrial Security Program Operating Manual. It's your guidance. And that set of bullets there in the middle, that's the table of contents, right? So everything that you could possibly need or need exposure to is included there, and it's a good starting point. And like all of these things that we've gone through pretty quickly here, the beauty is there's a lot of help out there. There are so many challenges to doing this, but like I said earlier, between the big companies that want to help you, other small and mid-sized companies, and the government itself, I have seen tremendous support in all of these areas. And we'll talk about where you can get some of that help right here. If you're brand new to this, I would say start with the Small Business Administration. If you're a veteran, there's a Veterans Business Outreach Center program that they have. But the SBA is a good place to start. If you just go on that website and start looking around government contracting, there are links to it that go through a lot of the same things that I've covered today. And then they'll cover some additional things. They have a lot of training available on their website. I recommend meeting with a representative there, and especially when you're starting out, they help a lot in a lot of different ways. One thing that we have in San Diego, and it's in different areas too, I know Orange County, but there's different cities and states that have this program as well, but it's called the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, the PTAC. They're the ones that do that search when a few slides back where I get the daily email with results. That's where I have that service. But they do a lot of seminars coming up here in San Diego. This is what's on their current schedule. I just got this yesterday. June 10th, creating winning proposals. June 11th, are you ready for government contracting? How do you create your capability statements? They'll do it sometimes on SAM, and they have advisors there who have a lot of experience. And so it's a really good resource. And I've got the link here to the San Diego one. Every department of the federal government has an Office of Small Business Programs. And then certain customers, and I use NAVWAR, the one located here in San Diego, they have their own small business program office as well. And I found these to be very helpful. When I had a different defense company about 20 years ago, and I didn't know what a defense company was, but the government wanted to buy something from me, that office walked me through setting up SAM. They sent me instructions on exactly what I needed to do and help me get set up, right? So they're there to help you because they have these goals. They have these policies in place. And then those last 3 government agencies that are mentioned there, when you're doing business with the Department of Defense, these are going to be the 3 that you come in contact with the most. There's the one Defense Contracts Management Agency that's dealing with contract performance and accounting things a bit. The Contracts Audit Agency is who's going to be out there auditing your financials. And then the Counterintelligence and Security Agency are helping you with security related matters. I have had more interaction with DCMA and DCSA than I did with DCAA, but even they've been helpful. DCMA has actually sent representatives out to my office to help us process an invoice on something we were having some issues with. They actually came out and helped us from our perspective, right? Counterintelligence and Security Agency, again, their agents have been to my office. They've helped us immensely over the years. So they all understand that as a small business, you have these burdens. Actually with DCMA, my representative in San Diego, when I first met with her, she said, honestly, we don't know how you small businesses do it. we're impressed that you get as close as you do. And their focus is on businesses that are intentionally doing things wrong. They're intentionally trying to defraud the government. So they're spending a lot of time on those kinds of things, companies that are doing unethical things. And so they take a lot of pride in the fact that if you're a small business trying to do it right, they want to help you. Okay, so these are some good places to get started. Also, I'm a book nerd. I like having my books close by. These are 4 or 5 that I use quite a bit. The first one that's listed there is never more than arm's reach for me. It's kind of a combination encyclopedia and dictionary. So anything I see that I'm like, I wonder what the government really means by this, it's in that book with links to other terms that are there. But there's others that are here on pricing, business development, contract management. The list goes on, but these are ones that are usually pretty close to me physically, right? We're going to see if there's any. We've only got about 5 minutes, but if there are any questions, I'll stick around, and as long as anybody wants to discuss anything, I'm good with that. But I've also provided you with my contact information here. Feel free to email me. Email is the best way, even though I will answer my phone, but usually it's after it goes to voicemail if I don't recognize the number. But feel free to email me any questions that you have. I love helping people get into this or make the decision not to get into this if that's what's going to be best for you and your company. So that's all I have from presentation standpoint. Nathan, I'm not sure if you've received any questions.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we do have a couple. So thank you, Andrew, for going over all this stuff. So one question was, what is an 8A company and what is the hub zone?
Good. I'm sorry, I had to rush through. I forgot when I was planning for this that we were going to have a little bit of Nathan's presentation at the beginning that I didn't account for. 8A and hub zone are SBA designations that are there for helping economically disadvantaged individuals or regions. I can't give you a lot of detail on the 8A because I know that it's an SBA program. I know that there are some pretty extensive requirements that you have to meet to be certified. But once you're certified, if you fit all the profiles, they establish a mentor-protege relationship with you with a large company, and there will be contracts that are set aside for you. We're actually teamed with a company right now that's an 8A, and it's for a fixed period of time. It's not forever. I want to say 9 years or 11 years. But they're going to guarantee work for you. We're on a contract where the government they wanted to make it an 8A. I had to go out and find an 8A company to team with. We had the technical expertise, but they had the 8A designation that would help the government meet its requirements. Hub zone is based on geography. They pick zip codes. It's done by zip code. And if your business and a certain percentage of your employees are located within that hub zone, there are contracts guaranteed to you, but it's percentages that are both on your labor force and the type of business you are, but it's based on geography. But they're just SBA programs that you can look into that can maybe get some business that you wouldn't otherwise be eligible for. That's a good
Awesome.
Yeah.
So another question, when you are picking your NAICS codes, is there a limit to how many you can select?
I've never heard of a limit. I think practically you're going to, pick a handful, 5 or 6 fairly general ones, and maybe 5 or 6 specific ones. But again, that's based on my industry. I'm not sure what their industry is, who's asking the questions, but I've never heard of a maximum. I've seen capability statements that just roughly, I would say there's probably 25 or 30 on there. That's something, if you're getting into this, you're going to want to develop a capability statement. It's basically just a 2-page front and back, kind of deal of what your company does. And you normally have those NAICS codes listed there. So, you probably don't want to choose a few hundred, but I've never heard of a limitation. I know I've never had any issues with the number that I have.
Great. Next question is, what does the decision-making process look like once a proposal is submitted? If you do know about that, can you explain a little bit about that?
So I'm not an expert in that because I never did it from the government perspective, but the mantra within the industry is proposals are not read, they're graded. Okay. So, and I'll give you an example of one that we're teamed with now. The process started last July. We're hoping that the contract is awarded this July. So it's about a year through the process. They've already ruled out some potential companies, and our company, the team that we're on, is still in the running. So what happens is the government in the solicitation is going to tell you exactly what you need to submit, exactly how you're to submit it, and down to the number of volumes. You're normally going to have a technical volume, at least in the services side. There'll be a technical approach, how you're going to do this, and a pricing volume. On larger contracts, like the one I was just talking about, there's also a management one. You had to do another volume that just dealt with your systems engineering practices. On most of them that I deal with, you upload your documents to a website or you email them in to an individual. On that one, because you had to provide sample products, it had to be physically delivered to an office in Orlando, Florida. Physically, you couldn't mail it. Somebody had to take it in. Now, once they receive it, they will typically do a technical review. The person doing the technical review is really the customer, but they don't necessarily control the money. They budget for it. There's going to be another side that looks at it from a financial standpoint and determine whether, if it was a contract that's based on best value, is this the best value? Some contracts are based on lowest price, technically acceptable. So if the technical customer said, yes, this company can do the work, they don't see the pricing. They don't know what they're charging. The contracting side that actually controls the money would then go, okay, the technical guy told me that these three companies can do it. We're going with the one that's the lowest price, right? So I hope that helped a little bit. That's my understanding from my perspective, but never having been on the government side, I can't tell you exactly how that worked. But the good thing is, in those documents, they're going to tell you how many volumes, what the page count for each volume is not to exceed. They're going to tell you that it's 12 point Times New Roman font for the text, no less than 10 point on graphs. And then they're going to tell you exactly what they're looking for. And what you want to do is write your proposal to hit those things that they're grading on, because you want to make it easy for the grader. Okay.
Oh, all right. Andrew, thank you very much. We're right at 12:01 now. So one last question, and not to put you on the spot, but will people be able to get a copy of your presentation?
Absolutely. I'm assuming I would just email that to you and you can get it out to everybody.
Okay.
And
for everybody to know, we'll record this session. We have recorded this session, and then we will post it on Extension's YouTube channel. The turnaround time on that is about a week. So once that goes live, I'll email that out to everybody, and I can include Andrew's slide deck at that time.
And I'll email this out to you as soon as we're done. I'll email it to you.
Excellent. Well, Andrew, thank you very, very much for providing that overview. It was a whirlwind. There is a lot in there, but it seems like it can be pretty straightforward, and there are a lot of resources out there to help people. So thank you for putting all of this together and sharing your knowledge with the participants today. And thank you to all those who did tune in and hopefully gain some valuable knowledge there. And that's it. So thank you very much. Hope everybody stays safe, healthy, and hope to see you during the next Small Business Series webinar.
Thank you. Good luck.